Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wisdom's Tent. Our guest today is Rabbi Avraham Sutton. Rabbi Avraham Sutton is an Orthodox Torah mentor, teacher, and author. For over 30 years, he has been learning and teaching prophetic Torah, Kabbalah, Talmud, Midrash, Hasidut, prayer, meditation, and sacred song. He has translated, edited, or authored over 20 major works in English on the deeper significance of Torah for our age. Shalom, Rabbi. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Jesse. Very glad to be with you.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to start out just by reading the introduction, the full introduction to your book, Spiritual Technology, and then I'll have some questions about that. Okay. Introduction. We're living in a special time, a pregnant time. In the history of the Jewish people and in the history of the planet Earth, it is a time about which our ancestors dreamed and saw visions. It is an awesome time in which everything hangs in the balance and all of history is coming to its culmination. It is a time in which the reasons for many things will be revealed. The single most important thing that we will understand, which includes everything else, is God's plan for us. We understand that through supernatural and natural means, God is bringing this plan to fruition. This involves moving into the next stage of history, the Messianic Age, the return of to Edenic consciousness on a higher level. This can happen in many ways, all depending on what we do. But one thing is certain, it will happen. All the threads of history are now being drawn together to complete a single masterful tapestry. This means that all unfinished business must be taken care of. In terms of history, which goes back to Adam and back further to spiritual dimensions, this means that all the major archetypal situations our ancestors ever lived through never reached their conclusions. Nothing was ever finished. Like a gigantic tapestry, history could only be completed at the end when all the threads would be drawn together by the master weaver. Beautifully written and exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Boy, I can really feel it.
We're living in that time.
I think we are. So what is so special about our times versus the times of all the previous generations that lived before us? We see all kinds of, personally speaking, I see just all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's almost like everything has been upended and there's no more answers. There's only questions. So the question I have for you is, what is so special about our time?
Well, it's the easiest and the hardest question to answer. I mean, we're at the tail end of what almost 6,000 years of history, according to the Bible. So the biblical template is there will be a 6 days followed by a Sabbath. And that on the millennial scale is 6,000 years followed by a Sabbath, and then further on into eternity, where the Sabbath is an elevation up to a whole other level of existence. And we're in the final innings of the 6th millennium. It's we have in our tradition, we have like almost an hourly account of what happened in the Garden of Eden on Friday afternoon of creation. That was when Adam and Eve were created. And so at 12 o'clock noon, the serpent entered into the Garden of Eden when Adam was not around. Adam had gone either up into the higher realms to be shown many things, or according to the Talmud, he was traveling around the earth looking for places of future habitation. One way or the other, Eve was left alone. And so the story of the serpent, which at the time was more nothing like a snake like we have now, but we're talking a lot of an allegory. We're talking also that there was actually such a scene that actually happened. And they're also talking that on the spiritual level, this was a test of incredible magnitude. One way or the other, Eve was seduced by this character to do something what's called the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But basically involves deeper levels, but for the moment, we'll keep it on the level of eating. Adam came back from where he was and knew that something had happened, and knew that he just actually took the food. And so the world, in all of the cosmos, in a sense, because it was such a pivotal moment, came down many levels into a physicality that it wasn't beforehand, into a physical world that the physicality was not as strong. Now it became stronger. Now their souls entered into their bodies, into their physical bodies, and that now, as opposed to what they could do beforehand, and they were not able to see, understand, or basically comprehend anything that they had comprehended before. Something was lost. So we can go more into that, but now come back into 12 o'clock noon of Friday afternoon of history was the year 1990 in our lifetimes. That's the way the calendar goes. In 1240 was the year 6000, according to the Jewish calendar of creation. 1240 of our common era was the beginning of the year 5000, when you're, on your five years old. That's the beginning of your sixth year. So it's the year 1240, and then you get further into 1740, 1840, 1940, 1948 was around I think it was 11 o'clock on the cosmic clock. 1948 when the state of Israel was established.
Mm-hmm.
Then 1990 was 12 o'clock noon. Then things went into a whole nother level. The peace process, that is basically the equivalent of the serpent challenging Eve on another level than it was in the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
And now, many years later, we're now much more aware of what the serpent was doing this whole time. The serpent actually is a power, a spiritual power that God created and allows to exist in order that there should be free will and that mankind should overcome it. But in order to overcome it, we have to understand it. But it hides, so we don't know what it's doing. But now, as it tried to take over the entirety of mankind in one shot 2 years ago, with the COVID pandemic, so-called, which never became, right? Then it started to reveal its real self. And what it's been doing for 50, 60, 100 years, this people have been bought into this thing and taken over by it and think that they're going to control the world. So this biblical story is now culminating in our time, when it's more day by day, every day, more and more of the evil that they wanted to do is being exposed, and more people are awakening. I think it goes so far as to say that the exodus, the biblical exodus of the Jewish people 3,000 years ago, was a template for the exodus of mankind from the system and the power of evil in our days, not just the Jewish people. We're just a small part of this. I think we're at 0.2% of the whole thing. And most of us don't even know what a Jew means. The point is that it's now such a large scale concept that we're moving into the Messianic Age as opposed to any minimal or minor type of redemptive scenario.
It does feel like when the mask went on, the mask fell off the evil. It seems like as soon as the masking started, the unmasking of evil started. And it's like it wasn't hiding anymore. It was out in the open for everybody to see.
Nope.
And now it feels like from every direction, there's a different kind of evil and deception. It's like the whole world has been painted in in lies that are very apparent. And you can see the ugliness and the evil right out in the open. And it's a little scary. It's a little scary. I've got to admit, it seems like, okay, so God has this beautiful plan, right? It seems like, he's going to take us back to this Edenic consciousness state, this state of perfection, this state of back from physicality to spirituality. And, but at the same time, I see that, you ask yourself, what is the best role that every individual can play during this process? What can we hold on to in a world of lies? And what best process can we play to help this come to fruition? It seems like it's out of our control completely, and we're all kind of victims of fate. There's nothing we can do to stop this turning of time that we're in. And so my question is, if there's nothing that we can do about it, and this is all part of a bigger plan that God himself has created, then what is the process like when my wife went to the hospital to have a baby? I'm standing beside her, I'm gripping her hand. Every little push and every little birth pain, I'm trying to help her get that new life out. And I know it's going to be good. It's scary and things are very intense, but I know that baby is going to be born, and I know I'm going to be there to catch it. I know I'm going to be there to support. So what in this birth of our maker, what is the best role that all of us can play? Jew, non-Jew, religious, non-religious. I mean, we all have the same creator. We're all from the same maker, whether we realize it or not. And I feel like, we're in such a time period now to where people that even maybe they didn't know what they believed, or they thought they believed in some hokey spirituality, people are starting to, I think, wake up to the fact, just your average person, to where you can't sit on the fence anymore. The lines of good and evil have been drawn, and you see that there's something bigger going on, something almost biblical, like in the Exodus days, like you say, when all these just monstrous, crazy things are happening, and we're all standing in the middle, and we're kind of like the children of Israel before they crossed the sea. Some people want to stay back, and just stay where it was comfortable and go back to the normal, when are things going back to normal? And, and the Pharaoh doesn't want to let us go, and he wants to bring us back to to Egypt and keep us in the slavery and all this kind of stuff with the whips and the harshness and all those things. So, so what can we do in this seemingly chaotic situation that we're in to help this birthing process along?
Beautiful question. So very, 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 very much the two main metaphors that are used for the redemption are birth and dawn. The darkness before the dawn is because the sun is coming up. It's still below the eastern horizon, but its rays are shooting up at a diagonal up into the night sky, and it's blanking out the little bit of light of the sun that's coming up is blanking out most of the stars and planets that we have, and therefore it's called there's only one that stays a little bit lit. It's called Venus, right? It's called the morning star.
Yes.
And so that is the moment called the darkness before the dawn. It happens every day. You just have to be able to know about it. It's an amazing process. As the sun comes up closer and closer, of course, then it becomes lighter and lighter. But at that moment before that, it's actually darker than it was for the night when the stars were shining. And then, of course, birth. And as the birth pangs become stronger and stronger, and the baby is being turned around in the mommy's tummy, a miracle is happening, and the baby is coming down headfirst into the birth canal, and it's narrow, and it's scary.
Yes. Narrow, scary. Yeah. Right.
And the Psalms, and King David writes about this in a number of places. In Psalm 20, Psalm 42, mentions that I called out to you from the narrow strait. Very often is that Psalm 118. The narrow straits pushes us, compels us to make choices. So it's very important to know that we do make a difference in this incredibly huge process that's so much bigger than us. What we do and how we act makes a tremendous difference. We weigh the scales one way or the other. And the fourth, one of the ways is awareness. Awareness is what's going on, awareness of what's going on around us, trying to put it all together in the most truthful way, not to fool ourselves. We don't know the answers always, we don't know why things happen, but sometimes within days or weeks it becomes clear why something happened. Still, there are a lot of things going on that are so crazy that what could we possibly do about Taiwan and about Ukraine and about Israel and the Middle East and the Syrians and the Iranians? And what can we do about the FBI and the CIA? And the senators are talking out in the middle of the truthful senators are talking out in the Senate and saying, we've been fooled. Now we have whistleblowers coming in from the FBI and telling us that what's really happening and that this whole system has been corrupted. So this is what some of us were waiting for this whole 2-year period, is that we were waiting for more and more of the actual signs to tell us, yes, you're right. Something is deeply wrong here that goes very deep in the whole system, the whole monetary system. Everything that's going on here has been sold out. And we were being fooled. There was hoaxes being perpetrated on us. We don't even know most of it to this moment, but we do know that our knowing about it makes a difference. It takes us out of the so-called matrix, out of the dream state that they've created.
Yes.
By the CNN and the television and all that. Stay away from these people. They don't want you to know the truth. They want to keep you in a form of trance. So, and once people are waking up, that's very dangerous for all of them. So people all over the world are waking up. I don't know, most people know, but over a year ago, I lose track of time somewhat, but I started seeing videos of tens of thousands of people in city after city throughout Europe. And then it started in America also. But the people in Europe rose up against tyranny. And there were peaceful demonstrations in the Netherlands, and then in Italy, and then in France, and then all these different places, city after city, not just countries, like one place in the country. No, city after city, people were marching against tyranny. Wonderful to see it. But most people didn't see it because it wasn't presented on the news.
I know. Wild. It's almost like they use the media. There's stories of like Pharaoh, and he could do all these magic kind of things, these illusions and these fake miracles and all this kind of stuff. It's almost like the media in their whole brainwashing system kind of like almost has that same kind of power where they can seemingly kind of create these miracles, but they're evil delusions. They're not good miracles, obviously. They're evil delusions. But a lot of people are wrapped up in that. And you were saying a minute ago that it's important to be aware of it, that we're aware of it. And I feel like it's also really important for us to say it to each other, to break out of the isolation that they keep us in, where we can tell the truth to each other. That, no, this is reality. This is where this is heading. This is where this is going. We need to talk. We need to get together. We need to tell the truth. I mean, because we obviously can't rely on any of the institutions or any of the things that we've relied on for hundreds of years. And really all we have left is, the truth and the justice and the righteousness inside of ourselves and each other, and the truth of, between each other. So I feel like it's very important, the way they isolated us all and locked us all down away from each other. That's so dangerous for us not to be able to talk and communicate and about these things. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Absolutely. And as you said before, when we were forced to put on the masks, which many of us did at the beginning out of innocence, we thought that was actually going to help. But then we started hearing people come and say no. Of course, their voices were censored. But then we started seeing more and more heroes coming forth. Dr. McCullough, Peter McCullough in Texas, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr.
Yeah.
Zelenko,
Yeah.
blessed memory. These
Yeah.
became heroes overnight because they refused to bow to the dominant narrative that was being hoisted upon us. And so truth and sharing and not being intimidated by the false narrative of fear. They're going to still try and do it with monkeypox, I heard.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
Even
you're
though
right.
even though the CDC, which is again a CDC, FDA, all these places they're supported and given money by the pharmaceutical companies, so you can see there's conflict of interest. The CDC has just taken off their website or put on something that it's no difference now between people who have been vaccinated and people who aren't vaccinated, which was the whole thing at the whole time, dividing people. Right. So they've silently, secretly taken it off, like as if that never happened. No, it did happen, and they'll be brought to justice for having sold out the American people, the people of the world, for people dying, for people having had to follow a protocol of the World Health Organization, which we now call the World Holocaust Organization.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Their protocol that most of the hospitals took on and got money to do it, killed people. So this is so serious.
Getting paid to murder for COVID deaths. It's insane. You know, I give painting classes in senior living facilities, and I mean, to go from doing what I was doing, really trying to bring love to these people and care to these darker places where people are a little more lonely, and bringing this, care to people, and all these beautiful students that I have that are just wonderful. I have 100 grandmothers and 100 grandfathers, and to go from that to seeing COVID patients sent into senior living facilities, and my business shut down and everything else that went on, and then killing off these beautiful souls that I was there trying to help and to make not feel lonely, and they were all isolated, the ones that weren't able, that didn't die, it was horrific. It was like something out of a nightmare to go from, Mr. Mustache's very caring paint class where I'm painting with these people, and then to see COVID patients sent into these places and watching them die like they did. Unfortunately, it was.
So may their memories be remembered, and for maybe you never forget them.
Amen.
This takes us now a little bit up above the physical dimension into the dimension of souls. We need to know that those people who passed away are alive. They were the sacrifice for us to be able to wake up. We will meet them again. There is such a thing as a resurrection. There is such a thing as a soul world. And we must know that, because otherwise the tragedy is so huge. It really was a Holocaust of major dimensions, what these people did. And what they'd like to do further, they're what's called dilution of mankind, of the population. Mm-hmm. Terrible. So why it's taking so long to bring them to justice, that's Hashem's plan, God's plan, but it will be done. Whether it'll be in the human court, there is a court now, a court case, a lawsuit being brought in Canada by a wonderful lawyer who has worked for all this time to build a case with 1,000 lawyers and 3,000 medical professionals to bring a case of Nuremberg II, of crimes against humanity. And this has been accepted by the Supreme Court of Canada. I haven't heard anything since, but I know it's going to happen. His name is Rainer Fulmich. Mm. So we can give links to who he is and what he's been doing.
Yeah.
Many people have come forward now to become the heroes of our time because they're standing up for the truth. And so that gives the rest of us also the strength to do the same.
Right.
And then again, the idea of the soul world is that even though evil has been perpetrated and wrong has been done, we will see that in God's plan, all this is part of a greater plan of redemption, including for all of us, the alive and the dead and the alive. The tragedy of death, as we see from the prophet Isaiah, the tears will be wiped off of the face of all mankind from all the tragedies, and we'll see the new age dawn, the true millennial Messianic age. So that gives us hope that we're moving towards something. There may be forces of darkness that'll try and come in between us and that'll try and darken the world temporarily. And we must fight that force. In Judaism, it's called monotheism. It's not God against the devil. It's us against the devil, and God is above the whole thing. He allows free will. Yes, he allows evil to exist, and he wants us to fight it and stand up against it. And when we do, we weaken it and we weaken it and weaken it until we break through. And that light, in the meantime, that's coming down and enhancing our ability to work with God and to be aligned with God's will. So I know a little bit went above here, but it's so important to take into account the large picture of God's plan, as we said from the very beginning, is that we've been privileged to be born in this generation at this amazing time in history. Yes, there have been great times in the past, but we believe that we were all at different times born, different times on this planet. And now we've all come back together for what I call Act 3, Scene 3. In other words, the final finale.
Right.
So we've all been brought back together with all our packages all the stuff that we did that needs to be cleaned up. We came back for our individual rectification for our souls and for the collective. And we came back to do something much more than just fix previous lifetimes. So the story is so magnificent, and it's going to become greater and greater. Whatever darkness is going to try and stop it is weakening and weakening and weakening, and we'll have nothing to stand on very shortly.
Amen. May it be so. So from what I hear you saying, the thing that we can do to fight the evil and to bring light into this darkness is to fix ourselves, to correct the things we need to fix inside of ourselves, to make ourselves right in our relation to God and to other people, and then also to speak the truth in the face of such deception. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely. Between us and God, between us and each other, and between us and ourselves. The three basic relationships that we have. Who am I in my own self? What am I doing when I'm alone? Am I just always looking for something else out there to stimulate me? Or do I have an inner life that's rich and full with what I need to get better? I need to do better. I need to do the good things that I need to do for myself. And then I go out and I see others. This is embodied, by the way, in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham was the one who went out and became the one who loved all mankind. Isaac was the one who had to work on himself. Jacob was the one who worked between God and man. So all three of them for us become the ideal.
Right.
They are the signpost of what we need to be doing. I get the strength to be who I am from my relationship with God. And then when I am who I am and I'm set and I become strong in my truth, then I can relate to others with that, and they will respond in kind. We can wake each other up. We can help each other to be who we have to be. That's love and respect for other human beings, every human being. Our children, look what they're having to endure now in this educational system, this false educational system that's being hoisted upon people. Terrible things have been done under the name of gender and all these things, these radical ideas that it could be from China, could be from somewhere outside, but it infiltrated and insinuated itself into American and European life to undermine all the values that are sacred to us. So this is where the fight is to help others to wake up and to know that we are holy, sacred souls. We are individuals who have come down to this earth in order to see God, to see God's manifestation in history. That's what we're waiting for. That's what we were told in heaven. It's going to be hard. You're going to forget, but there'll be things that'll be awakening for you, awakenings. And you'll see that as everything starts to come together, more and more people will wake up. And there'll be a celebration.
As they need to. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that, my children are homeschooled, but it's hard to imagine that anyone could leave their child in a school these days, in a public school, because it's almost, it's to the point now to where if you send them to school, it's almost abuse. It's almost child abuse to send them and to raise them up by those kind of beliefs and ideas, really a kind of a communist kind of upbringing and education. And you're really letting the state educate your child rather than you educating your child, right? And showing them the right path and that kind of thing. But yeah, so yeah, that is one of the many things that is turned upside down. But let me see. I wanted to ask you a few more questions here. Let's see. Let me see. We're living in special times. Okay, we went there. Okay, it's an awesome time in which everything hangs in the balance and all of history is coming to its culmination. Boy, do I feel that right now. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. As does the rest of the world, I'm sure. Let's see. It also says here in the third paragraph, it says, this can happen in many ways, all depending on what we do. But one thing is certain, it will happen. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about now. And that's really what I'd really, really like to make clear for myself and for others. So there's two ways this could happen, right? So God is going to give birth to this new world, to this better Messianic age. And there's two ways it could happen. Can you explain what those ways are? And so maybe I think what you're saying, and you can clarify, but if we don't kind of do the things that you and I were talking about, like work on ourselves in our relationship to God and to others and to speak the truth, maybe it could go an easier way. And then if we don't do those things that we need to do that God is requiring from us in this time, then God forbid it could go the other way and end up worse. Is that what you mean in this statement?
That's the traditional way that the prophets presented it. There are many different scenarios, and the prophets basically boiling down to the negative scenario, which is that will be great darkness towards the end, and the redemption will be with many people having to pass away and wars. God forbid. At the other hand, the prophecies are that I wish I was more of an expert in exactly showing you right now. If I had thought about it more, I would be able to quote verses.
Right.
One verse for sure in Isaiah is darkness will cover the earth, and a thick darkness the peoples. Meaning to say it will be somewhat dark, but then people's minds, because they'll be hijacked, will have such darkness, right? Darkness will cover the earth, but upon you God will shine, and his glory will be revealed upon you. So again, this could happen in the midst of the darkness as each one of us starts to feel God's light. And that's what's being called for. And again, then we manifest it by being with others, by helping others. My wife is showing me now here a page in a book that I edited a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
Can I read it to you?
Please do. Yes, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
A message directly from God by way of my wife. Whether we are ready or not, the Mashiach, the Messiah, will come. He will come as soon as we are willing to turn to God, whether we are worthy or not. this is when Mashiach will come. As we have seen, the tempering of judgment with compassion leads to awareness. That's a little bit needs explanation. It leads to the building of the holy temple and the ultimate revelation of godliness. Now, I'm not sure exactly how to explain that. This is what is meant by the Psalms, Psalm 18. He does kindness to his Mashiach. For every act of kindness and compassion leads to the revelation of Mashiach. If we will but inject kindness and compassion into every act, then today becomes the day that we have injected Mashiach into our lives. When these achievements of kindness add up. So this is what's called tempering judgment with compassion, that we live in a world where there's a lot of judgments happening, but we act towards each other with kindness and we tip the scales.
Beautiful.
So that's a little hard, but out of nowhere. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
my wife.
no,
God bless you.
It was just the message we needed at the right time.
Thank you. So these are hard times and hard questions to answer. Again, being seated in ourselves and talking to God from the truth of our being. God, we need you. We need your help. We want to do the best we can in order to make this world the way you want it to be. We want to align ourselves with your will, with your purpose, with your purposes. We know that you put us here for a reason. Until now, we've intuited that, but we need much more now. We need revealed signs of your presence with us. Of course, we see miracles. Anybody who has eyes, we just had 1,000 rockets shot at us last week from the Gaza, and not one hurt us. So we know what it's like to live in miracles.
That's a miracle.
And yet at the same time, we also know that there are manipulations of the Palestinian population and the Jewish population to continue a war that never ends. And if you really wanted to make peace, you could do it. But if you don't want it, you keep sinister actions to make people come against each other.
A constant deception to keep perpetual war going.
Yes, sir. Right out of 1984. You always have to have a war, right?
War is peace and peace is war.
Yeah. So this all is coming to an end. Whether it's Donald Trump or any other great man who needs to come up and step up to the plate, there aren't many like him. Maybe any like him right now who can fill that position with honor and dignity. We're all human and we're all lacking, but this man has dedicated himself. I believe that he made a pact that when John F. Kennedy was killed, and he was killed, we know, by bad actors.
Yeah.
That I will live to fulfill the legacy of that man who tried to fix the system but was killed by the system.
Right.
So Trump is not just anybody. He didn't come onto the scene out of nowhere. He has a background of caring that something has to happen here, and God should help him.
It seems to me, I was thinking after the raid the other day, it almost seems like Trump is an Esau kind of figure. He's not Jewish, but he's and he's got a mouth and he tweets and all this kind of stuff. But it's almost like God gave him that to defend himself, to become a fighter, to become, because what he fights for is righteous and it's just. I've never seen someone fight for such just causes before. No matter what you say about his character and all the way that they defame him and all this kind of stuff, he fights for very just causes. It's almost like Trump is saying, let my people go. And they come after him again, and they kind of plague him and stop him and try to bring him down. And then he comes back to the Pharaoh and says, I'm going to run again. Let my people go. It almost seems like that. And then they get more evil and they do these tricks and this kind of stuff, But the way, the night before that happened, I was up watching the U.S. Embassy ceremony, which I never watched the ceremony at that time when they dedicated it in Jerusalem and that kind of stuff. And it was so beautiful. I was seeing like the world set right, like justice was reigning, kind of justice was starting to rule, and it was like we got a glimpse of that, and the whole ceremony was so beautiful and all these things. And I was thinking, I was sitting with my son when Trump was giving the speech about, that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, and we're going to declare it, and that whole speech. I sat down with my son and we watched it and cried and just were amazed. It almost seemed like he was setting the world just. And then all the forces of darkness kind of fought back, and all the evil and all the deceivers and all the perverted people and all the twisted just started fighting back against him. And now he's like coming again saying, let my people go, to the deep state and to the corruption in the world. I mean, if you look at what he did in 4 years, I mean, it was like the world was starting to become just and honest. It was unbelievable. I mean, who would have thought that any of the things that he did I never thought that I'd see that in my lifetime. I've seen presidents talk about, the Middle East peace process and all this kind of stuff for, and the two-state solution and all that kind of stuff since I was a kid. And no one ever believed it was possible, And so, it's very strange. It's almost like Hashem gave us a small little glimpse of what the world should look like if it was in focus, if it was honest, and then he took it away, and now he's letting us see all this evil. So it's very biblical, I would say. Yeah. Unbelievable.
That's what gives us hope, is that we know that we're living through prophetic times.
Yeah.
And it's again, whatever valley of the shadow of death that we walk through, God is with us, is what makes the difference. And why we were sent down here at this time, at this point in history, and there are more of us than ever before. That's why I said it's like Act 3, Scene 3, when everybody comes back on the stage at the end for the finale. That's us. That's who we are. And the author of history is going to come out and make a curtain call, meaning to say God is going to reveal himself. We believe that that's what it's leading up to. It's hold on for the roller coaster ride, and be as calm as we can be in our own personal lives with ourselves and our children and our fathers and mothers and grandparents, and to lead a life that's worth it, that's meaningful, that's moral, that's value oriented, and to work together with each other to overcome the hatred that's being propagated and hoisted on us, is to counteract it with love. There is a verse in the Torah, then Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. You can always remember 19:18.
19:18.
You shall love your friend as yourself. I am God. It's 5 words. In Hebrew, it's ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha. Ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha ani Adonai. 5 words. And it has the same numerical value as another verse of 4 words in Deuteronomy 6:4. Love the Lord your God. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. Should love the Lord your God has the same numerical value as you should love your friend. And I am God. The I am God in that verse in Leviticus 19:18 means that certainly, God says, if you love each other, I can be God. If you cheat each other, if you manipulate each other, if you lie to each other, nobody will believe in me. But if you make a place for me to dwell, I can be revealed. I will be God. And what is it that you love? You love the I am God in the other person, the godliness of the other human being.
Right.
And that becomes the equal to loving God. Well, how do I love you, God? You love God by loving the human being who is created in the image of God. The equivalence is so powerful that it's not possible to be by chance. This numerical equivalents happen all the time, but they don't have significance like this one does. This one is one of the most powerful. It happens to be the numerical value 907, which doesn't have any particular significance for me in terms of numbers. But that this is 907 and this is 907, that's what's significant. So that gives us a little pathway to follow of what's most important and what really makes the difference on a day-to-day basis.
Kindness.
Now, living at home with our families, all kinds of stuff is going to go on, and the kids are going to grow up and they're going to be teenagers and they're going to want to do other things. Yeah, that's going to happen. I was a teenager. You were a teenager. We didn't want to do what our dad and mom wanted us to do, but the family structure is so important that the mother and father, so important that the mother and the father correspond to the first two letters in God's name. Now, we don't say God's name as Jews. We don't even say the letters without changing them somewhat out of respect. But the letters are Yud, and then the second letter is a Hey, the third letter is a Vav, and the fourth letter is a Hey. We say Yod K Vav K in order to protect the sacredness. Whatever the case, the Yud is a father. The father embodies the Yud, and I'll tell you what the Yud means. And the Hey, the mother embodies the Hey. And the son, the son, children, of course, we don't decide what we get, but a son and a daughter represent the Vav and the Hey to make one complete God name. We embody in our families the name of God. We do it in ourselves because our head is a Yud, and our shoulders are a Hey, and our torso is a Vav, and our pelvis and our legs are a Hey. Whoa, we are made in the image of God because God is beyond image. The image of his name, which is so significant. Why it's a Yud, and why it's a Hey, and what a Vav is, and what a Hey is. This is a little bit what mysticism, true Jewish mysticism is about. It's not hairy-fairy. It's not just scary stuff. It's the real reason that God made a physical world that we could be embodiments of his godliness, his heavenly godliness be embodied here in the physical world. That's what the temple was about. That's what the sanctuary in the desert was about. Was a little microcosm of all the entire system of universes, and that right down here in this world, we could do the service of the temple to rectify the entire universe. And we become a temple ourselves, and our families become a temple for God. So these ideas, I'm just throwing them in now in order to strengthen the idea that we have so much to live for and so much of value and so much beauty that God has given us that will be more and more revealed as the Messiah, the Messianic Age becomes real. The Messiah is a person, a man and a wife, and it's also a consciousness. It's an awareness that's dawning. So it's all of us.
So it's almost so when the Torah says man is made in the image of God, okay, so each of us as individuals have all of those attributes within each one of us, and then a complete family makes up that structure also.
Yes, and Israel as a nation, and mankind as a total entity.
Beautiful.
We're all temples of God. Temples of God. Again, the idea that God is above names, and God is above image. We speak about his names. The different names of God represent God's relationship, differing relationships with us. One is more merciful and one is more judgmental. But it's all coming from a God who is above all this, who interacts with us according to our actions and our deeds and our thoughts. That's why we have in Judaism, in the Bible itself, the different names of God. Elohim is the God who judges us. He's not punitive. He's not there to punish us. He's there to make us aware that what we do has consequences, that we should be accountable. because he has so much to give us. He wants us to go into a training school called Earth, so that in eternity we will know how to be accountable and responsible. That's what we learn down here on Earth, is to be accountable, that things don't just happen and everybody has to pay for what they did. There's a judge and there's judgment. But all of that comes from love. And the context of it, the whole thing is a God that loves us, who created us because he loves us. So again, judgment and mercy, judgment and love are very important, but they are not defining who God is. They are just defining the relationship we have with him. Very often in the old days when I was first becoming religious, because I myself only began to learn Torah at the age of 21. So I heard that during my growing up years that Christianity was saying that the New Testament teaches the God of love, and the Old Testament teaches the God of justice and judgment. And I realized, but even more now in the years intervening, that this is not true. The Bible is it's actually a fulfillment of a verse in Proverbs that it says, revealed rebuke that comes from hidden love. Great is hidden rebuke, is revealed rebuke that comes from hidden love, that flows from hidden love. The love that God has us is like a parent who cares for his children. If a child is about to do something to hurt himself, the parent acts swiftly and immediately to stop the child from doing that. That's called judgment. Hey, you can't do that. I'm saving your life. You might think that I'm grabbing you and hurting you, but really what I'm doing is an act of my love towards you.
Sure.
So God allows man free will in order that he can learn that actions have consequences. And all of this comes from a God who wants us to grow to our greatest, to be responsible, accountable, to be great, but not to be egotistical, not to think we can get away with anything we want. So that's why we have to be in this school down here called Earth. I don't know if you wanted to talk about this, but this is some of what's going on here as we go towards Rosh Hashanah. The judgment day of the year is coming up for us in a month and a half.
Sure.
So we're taking into account that everything will be judged, each one of us and all of us together.
And the entire world, not Jews, everybody.
Right. It's a Jewish holiday, but that people think, well, that's only the Jews. No, right. It's the Jews keeping the holiday that's for all mankind. Because judgment by us is, God, judge me. I just want to be transparent, God. I don't want to hide anything from you because I know that you see everything. So that's the healthiest way to relate to God. Judge me.
Let me understand myself.
Right, because I know your judgment is righteous judgment. And you want me to be the best I can be.
So it's very much, his relationship to us is very much like us to our children. You know, we have to execute a certain amount of judgment so that they grow up to be good boys. But we also have to make sure it's all done out of love and that there's lots of love in that balance to help them understand that, yes, you can't do this and you got to do this and you can't, but it's because I love you and I want you to grow up to be a righteous human being. I want you to grow up to be like your dad, to be like me. I'm trying to model what I want you to be and that kind of thing. So it's very much symbiotic, right? The relationship between our Creator and us and our children and on it goes. Like you said, it's kind of the patterns of things kind of reproduce themselves really from this world up to the higher world, I guess it sounds like to me.
Yes, absolutely. So this idea that that boundaries, and psychological boundaries, if I don't give boundaries to my children, if I don't say this is good and that's bad, they will grow up without a sense of in other words, we help them to grow up with a sense of what's right and what's wrong. There is an internal sense of right and wrong, but if it's not trained, if it's not given a place to to express itself properly. So then it becomes distorted. So the parent relationship with the children is one of love, but love itself can be to a child's detriment if it's so loving that it provides no boundaries. So boundaries are, if you come home after 12 o'clock, you don't get the car for another week. And no matter what you say,
Right.
This is good for you, because you'll know now that you said you'd come home at 12 and you didn't. There are consequences. So again, it's just helping each one of us to know. And that's what is really much intrinsic to any of us. It just has to be brought out. And then we live with that truth. We live with that level of honesty and transparency. But those who don't, right? Those who try and hide. God says in Jeremiah, Ha'im yisater ish b'mistarim, will a man hide in hidden places? Velo er'enu ni'um Adonai, and I won't see him, says God. Sorry, guys. I'm not a peeping Tom. I don't look at you from the outside. I know you from the inside.
Right.
So don't try and go into a closet and do something and think that I won't see you.
Right.
It's to your benefit to know that when I look at you and look down upon you, I'm doing it for your good with love that I have for you, that I want you to, I'm going to give you situations you're going to have to pass through in order to build you to be who you can be.
Right.
So whatever might seem difficult at the moment, when you look back and you'll say, wow, thank you, God, which is exactly like a coach to a guy who's running a marathon or an athlete. The coach is vicious. And at the end, when the guy gets the medal, he says, Coach, I couldn't have done it without you. It's an interesting model.
Yeah.
Whether it's a piano teacher or whatever, a violin, play that over again. Play it over again. I don't want to play it over again.
Yeah, and it's not until the end, until the violinist is a master and playing very well, and they're up on the stage with the whole symphony and they're playing their part beautifully, and they realize how thankful they are for all that discipline, all the stuff they didn't want to do, all the stuff that they thought was punishment is actually this beautiful, great gift that's going to give to them forever, right? Yeah. So on Rosh Hashanah, it's the day of judgment. It sounds scary. Especially with everything going on in the world these days. It's like, it is Rosh Hashanah, but it sounds like to me, the best attitude to have is just being like you would want your child to behave. You come into the room and you say, you want the best for me. You want me to become everything that you've made me. There's some things here that I can't see that are blocking me from my connection from you and from becoming everything you want me to be and everything that I can be and everything that I want to be. And so tell me what those things are so that I can see those things and understand them about myself so that I can then take a look at them and change them to their opposite. Is that a better way to approach judgment, maybe?
Absolutely. Yeah. Personal transformation is not becoming other than who I am. It's becoming more of who I truly am. It might involve dropping off some stuff that I've been doing till now, at least. It might mean stopping to do certain things, but that's not in order to take away my essence. That's in order for my essence to be able to develop in a way without that stuff hanging on to me. In other words, we don't like to see read about or see movies that will dirty our mind. We don't want to have images in our mind that are going to pollute,
contaminate our thoughts,
our beauty and our purity.
Right.
So I could say that when I returned in tshuva, when I returned in repentance at the age of 21, I drew a red line and said, those things I don't do anymore. Now I'm going to become a religious man. I'm going to try to do what God wants. It could be, though, after a while, that I look back and I saw certain things that I had done and I learned from them something, I can take the lessons and bring them into my new life.
Right.
In a sense, everything it's very ecological. Nothing goes to waste. You can look back and you can say to God, why did I do that? You needed to do that because you need to learn something. Even if it was only in order to help somebody else who's doing it, you
Right.
needed to do that. And
Right.
now you're not doing it anymore. Now you've grown beyond that. So we should be in a constant process of growth, of becoming more and more who we are. So it's and growth orientation. A husband comes home and his wife says, why do you do that? Why do you sit by the TV and drink beer? That's the way I am. If you don't like it, get out of the house. And he shouldn't say that. He said, you know what? Let's work together. And maybe I don't have to sit and drink beer. I can become more who I am by dropping off some of the stuff that I think I have been until now.
Right.
Let's open up our sights to higher visions and higher possibilities.
No matter where we're starting from, right? Even in the lowest of low places. If for you, it's, stop drinking the beer and instead go for a walk with your wife. That is a huge jump. If you can make that jump as a person that's in that scenario to overcome all those things that make you sit on the couch and drink the beer, and not want to be bothered, if you can overcome that, that is a huge ordeal to overcome. And surely there's so much, like you were talking about earlier, how we tip the scales of merit to either, God forbid, for the worse or for the better. So just correcting that one little thing. And now I'm not drinking the beer. I'm going for a walk with my wife. And we're going to talk about, a section of a psalm that I was reading this morning, or the Parsha for the week or something like that, will tip the world to a scale of merit for the better, right? In this process that we're in, the serpent from the, on the Shabbat Eve that we're in now, in this time of chaos, and we see all these judgments going on. So little things like that can tip the scale and make it for the better. So that would make probably the truth win over the darkness and the deception that we see much quicker if we would all just do little bitty things like that, I would think. Is that right?
Beautiful, Jesse. It comes down to how we live our lives on a daily basis. It's important to know what's going on the large scale, and that during the last 2 years, there have been now alternative news outlets that have become platforms that are allowing us to hear what's really going on. But most of our time should not be devoted to things like that. Just enough to be able to know what's going on and to pray to Hashem, to pray to God that he will bring about his plan through these people. We have a famous story of Haman, in the Purim story.
Right.
He's basically because of his hatred, he was basically the one who made the Purim, he got the Purim miracle rolling. If you see, the evil man plays his part unbeknownst to him, and certainly unwillingly. Mm-hmm. But that's how God is. And if he says, hey, you used me against my will, and so God says, well, you kind of did that to other people, so it's tick for tack.
Right. Yeah.
So you have
measure for measure.
Measure for measure. You have nothing to complain about. So God uses the evil man to bring about the revelation. The other thing I wanted to say is that your name, Jesse Joseph. Is really, Jesse is in Hebrew is Yishai, and he's the father of David.
Right.
And Joseph, of course, is the story of Joseph. And we have the concept of the two messiahs, the two Mashiachs, the Messiah, the son of Joseph, and the Messiah, the son of David. And they represent these two forces, these two powerful forces that God uses in order to bring history to its culmination. So I bless you personally and all of us that we should be worthy to see the culmination of this incredible drama that God has begun from Adam, and even from before Adam, the way he created the universe and our little part in it, even though we're a tiny little planet, but we've come here, our souls have come here in order to be part of a great awakening, a great celebration. And that Messianic age, we know certain things about it, that the knowledge of God will be permeating the whole world like the waters cover the sea. We know that we'll see face to face, eye to eye with the Lord as he returns to Zion, right? That all of the false ideologies will fall away and we'll see. And then earth life will continue on. The temple, they say, is only a halfway house, a necessary thing to return the third temple. The return to the third temple is where all of creation becomes rectified. The offerings of the third temple are with mineral, vegetative, animal, and it's the human being who does those. And so we offer ourselves. And the whole point of it is the clarification, refinement, and elevation of all of creation through the work of the temple. Most people don't know what the temple was about. There's more to say, but for the moment, it's the elevation of all creation to the point where a temple will no longer be needed because the whole world will be the temple.